So, Amy, thank you so much for being willing to share your story. Take it away.
All right. So 8 years ago, I made a call to the Arizona Republic newspaper to start up a home delivery subscription. And I only wanted the newspaper for the Sunday coupons, but the nice sales lady I had on the phone was telling me about this deal where I could take the Wednesday paper for a fraction of the cost. And so I wanted her to get the sale. So I said, okay, but I had no intention of ever reading that Wednesday newspaper. I was at a season in my life when I was raising 4 kids in elementary school, and my husband traveled a lot for his job. So I had very little space to leisurely read in my life. But little did I know, it was that Wednesday newspaper that would change my life. So each week, I found myself being drawn to this section in the newspaper called the Wednesday's Child. The Wednesday's Child is profiles of children in Arizona who are up for adoption and seeking a family through being in foster care at no fault of their own. And I was intrigued. Growing up in Indiana, I didn't know any kids in foster care, and I didn't know any families who took them in either. So week by week, I was just drawn to these weekly profiles, and I just had to read them every week. But then one Wednesday, I was reading a little girl's profile, and the Lord impressed on my heart that why did I continue to read these stories about these hurting children and yet choose to do nothing about it? And he was so right. How could I read these stories, feel the pain, but choose to just go about my blessed existence, shutting the newspaper week after week? And so after the Lord put that on my heart, I grabbed my husband and I said, come with me, let's go down to ASK, which is Aid to Adoption of Special Kids, who's the agency behind Wednesday's Child. And I said, let's go down to the introductory meeting and find out more about this whole foster care thing. And so we went to the introductory meeting, and we decided after that, yes, we would see about getting licensed to become a foster family. And I don't know if you know, but there's a lot that becoming a foster family entails. There's tons of paperwork and classes to take and interviews and inspections of your home. And so it's a long, tedious process. But we got through it, and we were licensed back in 2012, and we were ready to open up our home and our hearts to a child in need. And so one Tuesday night, I got the call that I needed to come pick up a little boy from the DCS office downtown. And so I raced right down there and picked up a little 6-year-old boy, Matthew. And we got him home and got him settled in, and all was good for a few weeks until nothing was good again. Little 6-year-old Matthew started defying everything that we asked of him and needed from him. In the mornings, instead of getting up and getting ready for school, he would race through our house, tear out the back door, and jump into the swimming pool in his pajamas, taunting us until we basically drug him out. He started throwing all of the food that I made for him for meals. He would put on his dirty shoes and run across our expensive sectional couch, all while calling me a bitch in the process. And he began pulling scissors on my biological children, threatening them whenever he could. He would also take off racing through our neighborhood, where I'd have to call the police time and time again to come help me bring him home. So foster care was becoming very challenging very quickly. We were relying on many prayers and professionals to help us get through each day. But the stress of this child living in our home was beginning to take a toll even on my marriage. And I was afraid if little Matthew didn't leave soon, that my husband was going to be the one to walk out the door. But the problem was there was nowhere for little Matthew to go. He couldn't go to another foster home with the behaviors he was exhibiting in our house. There were no beds open in shelters. There were no beds in group homes. So we were sort of stuck in this chaos until one day I was on the phone with a lady at DCS, and she told me that we could take him to St. Luke's Mental Hospital and check him in and leave him there. What? I didn't know much about this whole foster care thing, and I certainly didn't know anything about mental hospitals, but take a 6-year-old and leave him there? But that's exactly what we did in our desperation with our first foster placement. We drove him to St. Luke's Hospital downtown, mental hospital, checked him in, and left him there, feeling like a complete and utter failure. Obviously, the Lord had not called us to foster care, right? Because I must have heard wrong. Because if he had, it would never have turned out like this, right? And the nurses at that hospital were amazing. They poured into me, telling me that it wasn't my fault and that I'd done my best and I shouldn't take on the guilt and the shame and the regret. But I couldn't help it. I did. I felt like a failure. It's something I was so excited about and something that I thought we had been called to do. And so my husband and I left our first foster placement at that mental hospital, went home, and regrouped. So our family closed our foster care license, but then the Lord still tugged at my heart to help children in foster care. And so we decided to change our license to respite care. And I don't know if you know anything about respite care, but it's like babysitting, or helping out other foster families when they need to take a vacation or they need a break. So we would take kids into our home from like 3 to 10 days to help out foster families. And so those kids that came through our home during that time of respite kind of renewed our souls and got us feeling like maybe we could take in a full-time foster placement and try again. And so we reopened our license and we were debating, should we take in a toddler this time? A boy, a girl, what would be a better fit for our family? When God intervened and I got a call, could we take in an 11-year-old little girl who was living in a group home that needed to come out? Well, not a toddler exactly, but I was already raising 11-year-old triplet sons and a 10-year-old daughter at the time. So what's one more 11-year-old? Bring her in. And so Autumn came and lived in our home as a foster child for a year, and we had a wonderful experience with her. And then she left and went to live with siblings. And we decided, you know what? That was good. Let's go out on a high note, close our license for good. My kids were getting older, which means they were busier. None of them were driving. So I was, constantly busy taking them where they needed to be. And I just thought, I don't have any more space in my life right now to bring in foster kids. So we closed our license, but yet I still couldn't stay away. So I decided to start mentoring. So I started mentoring a 13-year-old girl who was living in a group home. And I would go and pick her up and take her to do things and build relationship with her. And then one day I took her to an event. It's called Children's Heart Gallery here in Arizona. And it's where kids who were in foster care and up for adoption, they come and they get their professional photos taken. They, get their makeup and hair done, and they get these wonderful profiles written up about them, all to go online in the hopes that a family will find them and want to adopt them. And so I'm sitting in the big room with Jenna, and we're playing a game, and in walks a little boy with his caseworker, and I barely noticed. The room is full of kids and caseworkers. And so he begins to walk by the table we're sitting at, and Jenna jumps up and she's all excited and gives him a big hug. And she tells me that they lived together in a shelter for 2 years together. And as she introduced me to this little boy, the Lord put on my heart right then and there that this sweet-spirited little boy was to be my son, that we were to be his family, and we were to take him in and care for him. And I couldn't believe it. Adopt? Like, we had never wanted to adopt. I was trying to do easy. Remember, I was mentoring because I wanted to help out there and not bring it into my home and my life every minute of every day. And so I could not believe this new call on my life to adopt this little boy. And so I went home and talked to my family, and I was telling them, you're not going to believe what happened, and showed them the pictures of the little boy. And they were all over me. They were like, no way, we don't need to adopt. We don't need another child. We don't need this and we don't need that. And the excuses in my family were flying as to why we should not and could not do this. But one thing I know for sure is that our excuses will stop us from doing hard but really important things. So I told him not to worry, that I knew that God was in control, and if this was meant to be for our family, then it would be. And if it wasn't, it would play out, and that we needn't worry. And so I really wasn't worried at all. And Phoenix started coming over to our home. He would come over and play, and then he started spending nights with us. And then we reopened our license again, and he eventually moved in with us, and we officially adopted him on November 19th, 2016, which is National Adoption Day. So we are going on 4 years now with him as a part of our family. And I have to tell you, he's absolutely thriving, and so is our family. And it's awesome to watch my teenagers loving on him and fighting with him and, just teasing him and loving on him and just showing him what real family relationships look like. And I'm just so humbled and amazed at this journey we've been on, from feeling like a complete and utter failure at this foster care thing to the Lord calling us to adoption. And so I don't know what's next for us, but I do know that during this pandemic, our family has reopened our foster care and adoption license. And I don't know what that means next for the future of our family, but I do know that we want to be available and ready to help Arizona's most vulnerable children however we can.